Now, Daesh has released an audio recording announcing the creation of a caliphate, headed by the group's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. After 2 years of fighting, Daesh is losing ground on several fronts. The group has suffered recent military setbacks and lost territory in both Iraq and Syria, and its caliphate is said to be shrinking. In June 2014, Daesh declared a caliphate after taking control of major towns in Iraq and Syria. Months later, the United States led a coalition to halt the terror group, yet Daesh captured more areas like Ramadi and Palmyra. But by this year, Daesh had lost its momentum. The group began to lose key areas in northern Syria and central Iraq, and most recently, the city of Fallujah. Now, for analysis on this, let's go to Firas Abi Ali in London. He's a Middle East analyst with the IHS research company. Really appreciate your time here. Now, in terms of the last night's attack on Istanbul's Ataturk airport, do you think there's any chance it might be related to the second anniversary of the Daesh declaring a caliphate?
No, I don't think it's necessarily related to that. I mean, it seems that 4 of the attackers that were involved in this assault had actually managed to get away, and this seems to suggest that the group has been preparing for this kind of offensive for a long time. It will exploit these kinds of victories in its propaganda and its messaging if it chooses to claim responsibility. But I don't think it's necessarily tied to the anniversary of the caliphate, and I think that it's too sophisticated to be tied to the very recent announcement of resumption of relations with Israel.
Now, obviously the coalition has gained ground against the fight in Daesh. Do you think in some ways this is not only an attack on their sort of geography as a caliphate, but also their ideology as a caliphate? And how has Daesh evolved since declaring a caliphate 2 years ago, keeping in mind that it's not just about the borderless region that they describe across Syria and Iraq, but also perhaps the virtual caliphate that they have in terms of influencing potential fighters in the West?
Well, as they lose territory, it becomes more important for them to maintain a narrative that they are supported by God into victory, that this isn't going to really diminish them. So we see them declaring that they've established a province in the Philippines. We see them declaring that they are present in new territories, and we see them conducting attacks outside of the territories that they control to show that they are still relevant. They're also probably trying to pressure Turkey over maintaining access to the Turkish border. And in terms of the ideology, this is the trickiest part, because this is the bit that's least confronted. The ideology of inserting religion into politics and forcing people to obey religious rules in modern civil societies is always going to be problematic regardless of the religion. But with Islamism in particular, this debate is quite stunted, and we're not saying enough to counter the specifics of this ideology, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as we just heard, the threats go beyond non-Muslims too. We understand that Daesh are making threats to Muslims in the West as well. So it's quite complex here. The international community, though, has spent billions of dollars to combat Daesh. In your view, how successful has the counterinsurgency campaign been?
In terms of forcing a reduction in the territory that the Islamic State controls and the number of people that it governs, there has been some success there. But for the success to be total, there needs to be a solution to the following question. How will the Shia majority in Iraq govern the Sunni minority? And how will the Sunni majority in Syria treat the minorities that are Alawi and Shia and Christian and Druze and so on? So it's sort of 2 faces of the same question. And political Islam, by forcing mainly Muslims to become more compliant and by imposing on the rest of their own societies more rules and more required proofs to establish that they are in fact good Muslims, it prevents that, because it prevents diversity and it prevents dialogue and it prevents the exchange of ideas. So until the core question of governance and the treatment of minorities is addressed, the military victories against the Islamic State are likely to be quite short-lived. And in order for political Islam to accept diversity, it needs to reinvent itself. It can't be really political Islam in the sense that we know it today.
Firas, really appreciate your insight today on our program. Firas Abi Ali in London for us there.